Ladies and gentlemen, this is the fifth episode of Concerned Dabs podcast. I am your host, Katie M. Kane. With me is my co host, Will Terps.
Yo, yo.
What's up, Will? So, today's episode, we're going to talk about cannabis breeding. We have Elephant Smiley from Terpenology and Noah Bentley from Dream Team Seeds. It's going to be pretty awesome. We got two guys who are in the game making stuff happen, and we got some cool questions to ask them, and um, also some dummy questions too, because I see a lot of stuff online, and it took me a long time to figure out what certain words meant. So it'll be cool to ask these guys questions like that, and they can hip us in a cool fashion. Um, Over there in the production room, has Elephant Smiley called back in? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna text him right now. So
Yeah, we got
what?
our first guest, Elephant Smiley. He's from Portland. What's the name of his seed company again, John?
Terpenology.
Terpenology.
Yeah, really cool name. Logo looks really super cool too. I just think it's dope to brand yourself as flavor. You know what I mean? Instead of something else, because it's like that's what people are gonna start shopping for.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
how'd you meet Elephant Smiley, John?
So I met him. I was working at this dispensary called Kings of Canna in Northeast Portland, and he came in there to look at some of our concentrates and the beans we had on the shelf. We had some seeds on the shelf, and he was just asking, and I said, "Dude, I'm gonna buy that last 5 pack of Dark Star if nobody else does tomorrow. Like we get paid tomorrow." And he was like, "Word, you like indica?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Cool." He's like, "Well, I breed and stuff, so if you get any mails, man, hit me up." And I got his contact info, and I cracked a shit ton of seeds that summer, like probably like 2 or 300. And so
Oh,
we threw a bunch of mails away, but I saved the ones that I felt were the healthiest and threw them to him. And it was cool. Like he used them, and the next year he threw me some crosses that he had. So I was pretty
nice.
happy. Um, and then since then, I just try to follow him online, and I don't know what seed banks he's in, like as far as vendors online, but he's got some cool crosses, man. The one I keep asking him about is the Pinky's Advice. Um, those seeds came from Pollination Elite Genetics out of Colorado. Those guys just dropped some packs by the store. You and I worked, Will, at Natural Wonders.
Oh,
And boss man hooked me up with a 10 pack. So I was like, damn, hell yeah. And dude, that shit was fire. It like was literally like gas and like fucking dirty diapers, bro. Like it was fucking like, oh, this stinks so good.
yeah.
You know what I
That
mean? And
that raunchy.
yeah, bro. I still haven't got any of those beans yet, but hopefully we can make that happen sometime in the future. Is
Definitely.
Smiley tuned in? Are you there, Smiley?
Yes, I am, boss.
All right, live on the
Yep,
air,
yep.
ladies and gentlemen. We have Elephant Smiley from Terpenology. How's it
Yes,
going,
sir.
sir?
Yes, sir. Just been doing some stockpiling of what the phenos on the mothers we're going to go for to kind of start cubing out some genetics, and then we're going to be stabilizing some of our other stuff in F2, F3, F4s for seed release. So, yeah, we've had quite a task. And And it's cool because I have actually been dropping a lot of the stuff where you were getting the really cool genetics from Dungeon Vault Genetics, pollination, like you were saying. And when you were coming up with all those crazy males, the cool thing you did, which taught me a lot, was that you grew them out in really big containers. You treated them just like females. You gave them that type of an attention. And
Yeah.
because you did that, I noticed that what came out more of the male was basically a more like a proliferation of that genetics by pushing it out more, rather than most people will cull out their males if they find something really exceptional. But because you were growing them all out, what I really noticed was if you really push the male plants even beyond one season and re-veg them, just like you would
Yeah.
a female that you really like, right? And even in that re-veg, a lot of people notice that the female plant gets better. It gets stronger in attributes. I did that with the Trinity a few times. I re-vegged it, and it just seemed to get more specific on the profiles. It itself dialed in what I needed to dial in. So the male
Dope.
plants too, by the second round of re-vegging them, they were starting to show THC development. They were starting to
Word.
show terpene profiles that were, I mean, that humble pie and that foul mouth that you gave me in those big kangaroo, like, I don't know, what were they,
I think it was root
30
pouch. It
gal?
was like, yeah, they were pretty big. I'm
Yeah.
like, man,
So,
I had no
what,
time to sex anything, so I just went straight and everything, and had to pull everything out once I saw it was a male. You know, it's like, damn.
right,
It was already
but
like
because
July.
you put the soil regimen just like you would the females, I could feed it just like I would a female. I could give it the same attention I would a female, and in that, two of those humble pie phenos gave out such. I mean, fuck my cherry pie female, fuck my Girl Scout cookie forum cut. That humble pie gave out such a strong terpene profile in the stem rub beyond even the THC profile that was starting to show. That anything that we've backcrossed that into, and I mean even like the Ewok from Alien Genetics, which is like really profound and it's kind of like Albert Walker, funk, but
Yeah,
it brings out so much more when you really have a male plant that's dialed in on a certain terpene structure. That really allows you to figure out now which side the female is leaning on and what attributes are going to be added from that male, because that male was pushed as far as it could go, not just you got 20 male plants that really didn't get bigger than 10 nodules, like 3 feet high, and like little 1 gallon pots, but they started to show something that was rare, a terpene profile, maybe a little THC, but you really didn't grow them out like you would a female. You didn't give them the attention. You just found something rare in a strain that everyone wants, like the Wi-Fi, or you grew out 10 lemon pound cakes and all 10 were fucking males. And out of that, because you knew everybody wants the lemon pound cake, you found one of those 10 males and said,
well,
this one has attributes I like, but I know everybody
well,
wants this strain, so I'm going to cross it into everything. That's
well. To
not the
me,
MO to go on.
like my cousin, like he went to Amsterdam and got a shit ton of seeds of that super lemon haze, and it's like
Right.
that lemon pound cake was like the B side to those seeds. You know what I mean? Like the pheno you wanted
Oh,
was the
yeah.
super lemon, but there was a B side pheno, and he called it just the lemon cake. But when I saw
Right.
that in stores, I'm like, fuck, I know what this shit is, dude. Like this is it's the B side to those seeds. Like it's just the pheno that didn't show up as much, and people are hella into it now.
Oh, I mean,
So
and that was the one thing that I really liked about TGA when I first started breeding with TGA. And in my opinion, if you're going to start out breeding and you're not really doing it for sale, you're just kind of trying to learn about genetics. I think TGA, their early stuff, not when Subcool and Jill split, but when it was TGA and they first came out with the Jelly Bean and his Apollo and this. His shit was so, it wasn't pollen chuck, but it was so not stabilized that you got such an array of phenos that it was really, when people were getting into the Jelly Bean or into the Vortex, they were finding these phenos that I think Jelly Bean in itself, I think at Harborside or one of the cloning Cali Rex, I think they had something on file like 300 different clone phenos of the Jelly Bean.
Yeah, dude. There was a lot of I would
So I
call
mean,
bullshit
it
when
it,
I see it
it
at
it doesn't
stores
mean
because
that
the phenos
anything
are
you
so
could breed
different
with
on
would be
that.
stabilized, because it just means that's the array and what the velvet, orange velvet was, what the Space Queen was, what the Romulan was. But if you learn how to understand those terpenes, and that's the thing too, when we were talking about Phylos, talking about Mr. Holmes, right?
Yeah.
And I saw in the Potlander, I just picked up the Potlander the other day. I've been so busy, I haven't been checking in on what's going on, really nothing. But I saw that, Jeremy Plum, Cascadia Labs guy, and, Philo Science, Mr. Holmes, were all doing one of the terpene events for the upcoming uh, the cannabis grow event that they do. And what he was now focusing on, and I remember he had a terpene event like back in 2014, maybe. It was in the Laurelhurst area. It was done by Jeremy Cascadia Labs, and it was all about terpenes, right? And so
Like
Fresh
pay for this
Farms,
test.
everybody was
Pay the
there.
extra.
And I
Pay the extra.
remember when they were talking about the terpenes, it was like it was such a new infancy thing that when they were talking about terpenes, it was like the numbers were 2% to 4% the highest that anybody was talking about. In Cascadia Labs, the most advanced understanding they had of terpenes was just breaking down the OG Kush to terpenoline, linalool, myrcene, beta carotene, all these broken down terpenes, so you kind of get an idea of smelling a plant like a nose would do for perfumes when they hire a nose who can break down. Okay, I smell lavender, linalool. I smell cinnamon, certain types of pepper, beta carotene. I smell, and so when someone can break that down for a plant,
Yes, sir.
for one, when they're breeding, it's another thing too when they're being able to find those phenos. But when we were at the Cascadia Labs, the one in 2014 Jeremy Plum was putting on, when I told these guys that I brought labs with me because I didn't think anyone would really believe me if I came talking my talk, and I said, these are my genetics that I've been breeding for terpenes, not bud structure, not necessarily mold resistance, not necessarily THC, CBD production, but terpene uh, specifics. So if I'm trying to follow this funky Hindu Kush, uh, as opposed to this OG Kush kind of thing, then strains I'm looking at to breed are Cinex, not just the purple Kush, the Hindu Kush. The Cinex had a really good Hindu Kush in there. A lot of people thought the Cinex was Cinderella and Vortex, but the X represented
Yeah.
the unknown. If you really understand the terpenes of that plant, you can smell the
Yeah,
Kush, the
dude.
Hindu
It
Kush
it
in
sm-
there.
yeah,
And
it
so
smells like
when even
it
breeding.
smells like Cinderella hella too, man.
Right, right. And this is the thing too. When I started to breed the Cinex as opposed to breeding the Cinderella, I knew that Jeremy hadn't really stabilized the Cinex too well. So I knew he had a. I knew because I knew Jeremy way before he started doing his thing, like 1999, 2001. He was working for my mom over on Alberta. She had a shop called Groundswell Cafe. But anyways, Jeremy had a really good connection for his boy in Cali. He was bringing up this fucking fire Cindy, this fire Cindy 99. And
Yeah,
one
it
of the
smelled
things
like
about it
perfume,
was
bro.
is that I knew that must have been the Cindy he used in breeding in that Cinex. So when I started breeding his cut of the Cinex, I started connecting it to a Chem Dog and a Chem Dog Jelly Bean cross I had that really brought out the diesel with the linalool. But it wasn't fully stabilized. I started kind of stabilizing it, but when I crossed it with the Cinex, what I what I saw was brought out in the Cinex were about 10 different terpenes, and one of the expressions was probably my favorite cut of the Cinderella, that it literally brought out probably the Cinderella cut that I knew from Jeremy uh, in two of the phenos. I think
Okay.
two of the other phenos had a very kind of Cinex Chemdog thing going. One had kind of a more jelly bean Cinex sweet Cinex thing going on, kind of not too rare in terpene output, but one of the Cinderella phenos that I kind of kept and bred and stabilized, brought me back to my favorite cut of the Cinderella, but I found it in the Cinex by cubing out what was most important in Jeremy's Cinex cut.
Word. Okay, so to I sent you these questions a little bit earlier, but I just want because
Yeah, I saw those.
you're yeah, you're super knowledgeable on the game and everything, but some of our first time listeners might be a little bit new. So I wanted to just ask some, you can call them dummy questions if you want, but pretend I'm a patient or a new grower or something.
Right.
What does back cross mean?
Um, Backcross in its loosest form means you took plant A and you crossed it with plant B. So you back crossed it with a plant to where now basically what you're creating is a hybrid. So if
Okay.
someone said
Well,
this is a
what if
Blue
it's like
City
it's
Diesel back,
yeah,
if they say
back
it's a Blue
cross, yeah,
City
like
Diesel
it's a
back cross, they're not really saying it's a Blue City Diesel exact strain. They're saying it's a back cross of that strain. And it could be that it was back crossed into itself. So if the
yeah,
Blue City Diesel was right back crossed into the Blue City Diesel, you probably have a more dominant structure of whatever pheno of the Blue City Diesel you were working with. If you back cross the Blue City Diesel with the
New
blueberry,
York
you
City
probably
or New York
break down
City.
the blueberry profile in the Blue City Diesel, as opposed to if you back cross the Blue City Diesel with the NY City Diesel, you would probably bring out the diesel and the Blue
Yeah.
City Diesel.
Okay. So my next dummy question, what sort of methods do you use? Like sometimes I see guys online using a paintbrush. Some guys will
Yeah.
put
Shake
Yeah, I
the
think
whole
a paintbrush
branch.
is
yeah.
cool if you're really not worrying about the pollen floating off, if you're really in a loose, open pollinating area. But if you want to be real, if you want to do that kind of, I want my one strain to have three different pollen types on it. In my opinion, the best way to impregnate the hairs to the calyxes, which is basically, if you look at it, the calyx is the womb, and not to be vulgar with it, but the hair is basically the vagina, right? The clit. So
Yep.
the clit is sticking out of the ovum, and to impregnate the ovum, you have to take the pollen as the sperm and hit the tip of the hair, which is the clit, and allow that impregnation of that pollen to slowly go down that hair, which you'll watch it to slowly redden, and then it goes into the ovum. So it impregnates probably within an hour. Within an hour, the pollen can impregnate calyx to where you can probably wash it down with water and not worry about that pollen really spreading because it's already impregnated that calyx and wash it away. But this is what people do with the brush. I see them taking way too much pollen on their brush, and they think that just by dropping it all over the bud, that it's just sitting on the bracts really well and sitting in there and not floating. But as soon as a little wind or a little fan comes, if you're not trying to pollinate the whole crew of your plants, then there's no way you can have a very precise uh, breeding regimen if you're breeding with a brush, if you're breeding with bags. So in my opinion, if you want to get the closest, most personal pollinated method with the plants, I use my fingers. Because for one, the pollen kind of gets deeper into the pores of your fingers, into the little crevices, and because it has a very moist texture to it, when it sits into your fingers, you're able to really feel when it's getting into the THC to kind of grab it into the hairs. So you're really able to push it in there in a way, in my opinion, after doing that for about 2 minutes, really pushing it around the bud. I wait for about 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes, and then I give it a spray off. So basically, all the excess pollen I want to just spray off onto the ground. I don't want it sitting there. And that's
Awesome.
pretty much
Just use
my
your
MO on
hands.
how I.
Just use your hands. Yeah, that's tight, Smiley.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I use my hands, and when people see you remember seeing my seed production when on a
Yeah.
single limb, I would right, and that was just
Yeah.
me really, I mean, I would do it with a brush, but if I really wanted to get as many seeds as I would get in there, I would want that pollen to sit on my fingers as long as I could because I'd feel it in there. But with the THC, I'd know it'd start to absorb in there. And then I would just push it and push it all over that bud site that I wanted pollinated. And I could get pretty consistent if I wanted to do one plant and have four different pollens, four different, eight different limbs. With those four different pollens, I could get pretty precise results as a difference from those four different pollens and know the difference. But you got to be so on point on how you do it.
Word. So my next question is what does pollen chucking mean?
Uh, Pollen shucking is basically probably what most young breed or not young but new breeders think when they're like, "Yo, man, I'm gonna grab this Mac cut from homeboy who knows connection to cap, right? So it's a real Mac cut. I'm gonna grow it out, okay? And then my homeboy gave me some pollen from the peanut butter breath that he grew out from a pack of Gromer seeds, Thug Pug. And I'm gonna make the sickest fucking Mac peanut butter breath cross, and they're all gonna fucking want it, and it's gonna be just the shit. And what you do is rather than really have an isolated this pheno to this male plant or these four max to this peanut butter breath, uh, to allow the person to really be able to discern the differences that the male and the female influence did on each plant or just the one plant, you got to have at least 20, and this is why breeding, you got to have space to do it. And it's not like I limit the person who can breed, but the amount of space you need to breed properly, you need at least 20 plants of each strain to at least search out a pheno that will be closely related to the mother, the father, and a 50-50. And when people get
Word.
up to those 100 counts, those 1,000 counts, I'm doing a major pheno hunt, 100 to 1,000 plants, because they know in those 1,000 plants, 100 plants, there is a guaranteed fact that they're going to come across one mother that's exactly like the mother, one father that's exactly like the father plant, and one in the middle amongst 20 plants that will show little variations in the middle. 61 4 60 40, 70 30, 50 50, 51 49, just very variations, nuances, but to pick that one and discern the one because you know both the mother and the father, you've been growing them for seasons, you know the differences, you know what they can do different in how you give them nutrients, you know the soil. You have to grow the mac and grow at the peanut butter breath so long to understand what those nuances will give back when you grow out the offspring that a pollen chucker will just grow out that mac. He'll grow out that peanut butter breath or just have the pollen as soon as the plant's going, and he's like, this is the shit. This one plant right here is going to win every cannabis cup. He throws a bunch of peanut butter breath pollen on it, and as soon as he's got those seeds, he goes up on Instagram and he goes, you want to know what's going to win a cannabis cup? He shows a
Word.
picture of the Mac like anybody does, and he says, "This is the motherfucking mother I use, so I'm guaranteed you're gonna find these phenos." And that's what pollen checking is, because it's not
So
giving you enough statistical evidence based on trial and error. It's just
so
saying that somebody grabbed
just a
something he
guy
thought was
winging it
rare.
more or less. It's
Yeah.
like a guy winging it. Like if I would have kept my males
Hmm.
and then just threw it on whatever plants I had, then that would have been pollen chucking. But I was like, I'm not qualified to deal with such things, so I'm gonna hand it to my homie because he's been He knows what he's doing. You know
But
what I mean?
it's not pollen chucking if you're going to take out the offspring and really pheno hunt because you understood what the two plants you played with. So
Word.
even if you
Yeah.
grew them once, if you're still spending a lot of time to pheno hunt, then you're still not pollen chucking because you're taking a lot of time in the post grow to find what was most important about the plants you liked. But if you just crop them up real quick, grow them one time, and tell everybody who thinks those strains are popular, yo, man, I just crossed the Candy Rain with the Lemon Pound Cake, back cross to the Forum, back cross to the Thin Mint, back cross to the OG Kushbrook, back cross to the Mac. You're just going to have one fucking unstable plant.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so my next question is what sort of tests do you run on new genetics that you're breeding, like as far as, like maybe mold resistance or like maybe how long it could go without water or anything like that? What sort of stress tests or anything like that do you run on your plants?
Yeah. Well, we stress all our seeds out. We want a germination rate that's probably going to be most conducive with a 14-year-old growing it somewhere in a really swampy area in Georgia or like a really humid area in Colombia, Canada, where like not that many people live in that area. So it's like the most random. We don't want to take the most perfect grow operation and say that everyone's going to be operating at this level to plant these plants in the most pristine, commercial op. Because I think a lot of the companies that do that, and I don't mean to like call out names, but I think when certain companies grow their and breed out their genetics in such pristine climates with such adaptive, machines and operations, it makes it so hard for the kid or the new grower, the grandma who's going to be growing it in her backyard, for her to get the same germination results that those guys do in such pristine situations and grow locations. So we stress out all our seeds so far, even before they get to F2 or F3, because we want to know that if you pop them in the water, if you take a 12 pack or a 6 pack and you put them in the water, if they're female male ratio seeds or female seeds, we want to know regardless, you're going to get 10 that are cracking, 10 you're putting into the soil, cocoa core, 10 that are popping within 2 days, 3 days. Within a
Yeah.
week to that, there are. So we want to know, no matter what your experiences, we're giving you a seed that is strong, hybrid vigor, and if it is an outdoor seed, like the Space OG, I always tell people if they want to grow a plant that give them sativa terpenes, but will harvest like an indica, but giving big results. The Space OG, and specifically finding, like I say, the pheno that's most important, we call it the citrus drink because it gives off a real citrus profile to the OG. Um, it's hardy. We tested it out. It's got straight mold resistance to Pacific Northwest specifically. It can get rained on like a son of a bitch. We tested it out with this guy growing it over in Bend. We gave it to this guy growing it out over in Pineville, where it's just like you got to find water to fucking in the caliche soil. We gave it to a person who's growing in a really pristine greenhouse. We gave it to a guy who's growing in his spider mite infested indoor, and all of them have pretty much finding the rare pheno that they can all basically sort out from this guy to that guy. Man, this one smelled like oranges, man. It was just like a fucking, like a thing of fruit I got off the corner. And
Yeah.
the other person says, man, I also found this other pheno that outdoors I got like 4 pounds off it, and there was barely any mold, and I harvested it damn near in November.
Yeah,
So, that's
I
a plant
I
I've
scored like
tested outdoors, indoor, but mostly for someone who wants to grow outdoors. But if they were saying, I want to grow a really good plant with high terpenes, can I grow will I get the best results growing the OG space cookies, which is basically the Girl Scout
Chemex,
cookie
bro.
forum
The
that
the
crossed to the space
Chemex.
OG? Would they get the same results growing that outdoors? And I would say not unless they're closer to Cali, more southern, because growing a strain like that in Pacific Northwest, such a indoor kind of cookie strain, it can really get so heavy in crystal production that as soon as you get a little moisture, rain, oh man, that white mold comes in like, THC is really like the salt water to cocaine for marijuana mold production.
Yeah. Dude, almost every cookies anything I ran outside fucking started molding. Like light dip is the only way, cause fuck, dude, all those like most anything cookies too runs hella late, bro. Like fucking
Yeah,
like three
and
months and
and and a
shit,
lot
and
of the
it's like,
plants
man,
too. I mean, they might give off
it
nice
can't.
buds. They give really stringy stems. So if you don't know how to, that's why we crossed a lot of our cookie strains, because what we noticed was it was all right production, but the stems were just like growing the chem dog and telling someone to get amazing results on it. It's too stringy of stems for you to like bulk out buds unless you really know how to prop up your plant right, and to really
Ellis.
uh, put in something that's going to allow it to structure itself. And a lot of people really don't know how to put in that kind of uh, um, netting and all that, and do it right. So to give someone a plant, like, see, our OG space cookies, when we put our space OG into something like the Girl Scout cookies, we knew it was going to strengthen it up beyond all the attributes of hybridizing and giving it vigor. We knew it'd strengthen it up, but what it would do, because of the Space OG's terpene profiles, it would bring out something unique out of everything that was important in the Girl Scout cookie. And honestly, if someone gave me, and someone did just give me a really amazing forum cut of the Girl Scout cookie, and I'm going to use that, and I got a really good pack of seeds, cereal milk, which is a really good thin mint Girl Scout
That sounds
cookie
awesome.
hybrid. But to focus on what's most important out of the thin mint, to focus on what's most important out of the forum cut, if you really got the forum, if you really got the thin mint, because a lot of people don't even know what the real Girl Scout cookies is. So if you can give them something that is at the same terpene profile, but the structure is giving them more. That's why I like the sour lamb. I told a lot of people, if you like the sour diesel, the sour lamb cut I got right now is so much more sour and gives you so much more structure and harvest so much earlier, that it's way more preferred for that sour fennel, in my opinion. But a lot of people still, it wasn't leaning more on that diesel side, and it was way, because of the lamb's breath, it was way too more sativa for Pacific Northwest. We put the Sour Patch Nugs into it, which, with the jelly bean and the Sour Patch Nugs, it adds in a lot of sweetness to what the sour lamb. And now we're getting all these phenos. We're calling it sour Sid. We're getting all these phenos that are just sour this, sour OG, sour like this, sour. I mean, you know what I mean? Just every range of
Word.
sour. And we even did one cross where we put in the Sour Lamb Sour Patch Nugs back cross to Pinky's Advice, which is also a sour diesel jelly bean back cross to the
Man,
white
throw me
strain.
some of those, bro. I want some of those beans,
Oh,
bro.
bro, they're matching up so amazing. I mean, the sour, the jelly bean, and the white connected to the sour lamb, the sour diesel, the jelly bean, and the space OG in there give such a combination of matches. That's what I say when you're matching the profiles. So this terpene profile is now matched with this terpene profile. You start, because sour diesel and chemdog are two of the hardest terpene profiles to pass along to another generation. You got to fennel hunt, and stabilize and cube to even bring that out in your hybrid, as if there's any reason to
Yeah,
have a difference. That
yeah,
when we created the Sour Patch Nugs, there was such a difference in the sour diesel. It was such like a sweeter jelly bean sour diesel that we just fucking loved it. But the thing about it wasn't the biggest producer, but this fucking sour lamb was such a producer, and it was an earlier producer, that when we put the two together, and then on top of that combination, we add in the Pinky's advice to the sour lamb, because that's another connected combination. All the phenos now have an attribute that is really like combining the Tetris links. This matches up to this, so you're going to get this profile. This matches up to this, so now you can pretty much know, you know, these are my jelly bean sours. These are my sour that have the kind of sweetness jelly to them. These are
All
my,
right.
lamb's breath sativa sours that are kind of more of a Jamaican sativa but have that sour to them. So now you have all these different expressions of sour that are very hard to combine in that terpene profile of what creates sour or what creates OG. And then to pass it along, and also to pass it along because you're creating different expressions of it, which create a new strain where someone's like, why do you like the gelato more than the Girl Scout cookies? Why do you like the Miracle Aliens more than, the cookie, blah, blah? Because everybody has a different preference, what they like in perfumes, what they like in food, and the same thing will go into cannabis and what profile they like. And so in that, finding the right profile that someone could actually go into a rec and say, man, this strain right here is the fucking bee's knees, but they called it like monkey balls, and these people called it oatmeal dick, and these people called it princess's smurf. So I don't know what the fuck you guys call it, but I got this terpene profile of it. Do you have anything like this? And that's how
Word.
you would now match up people's cannabis
Okay, we
choices on terpene
okay.
profiles that have now been
That's what I
very
feel too.
stabilized to be,
I I
because
feel
then
that's the
someone wouldn't
future
have to
is selling
constantly, when
on
I go into a
terps,
shop and I say, you got
not on
anything that's
names.
really sour or you got an OG, they give me all these things now, whether it's Josh's OG, White Tahoe cookies, and I'm just like, the fucking name don't mean anything. And they give me some concentrate, and now they're doing the same thing with the terpenes. They did the THC. It says 9% on terpenes. And I'm just like, 9% of what? Nothing out of nothing equals nothing. And so what they're still not doing in a lot of their strains, yeah, you might be growing in name alone. The Samoas, the Dosey Dos, you might be growing some dog walker because that's what people told you you're growing. But if you don't have a sense of those strains and you don't know what's important about that terpene profile, you're damn sure not going to be able to isolate it.
Word. Okay, so we
And
have a
that's
question
the
from
one thing
our
I wonder even about Phylos Bioscience. What I mean, a lot of guys send in, this is the tried and true sour diesel. Okay, AJ sends in the sour diesel. Uh, Homeboy sends Chem Dog, Buddy sends in the Chem Dog. So they have these markers. I know for sure because the guy who grew it, bred it, sent it in. But how many people really have an understanding who are creating these markers what the real strain is, so that they themselves could even see a sample of sour lamb or fucking super silver haze and say, man, this is this is the most profound, specific terpene profile I've smelt on the super, lemon haze or the super silver haze since back in the day in Amsterdam, in '96. And I just don't think Mr. Holmes has a background in cannabis, or anybody who's fucking working in his establishment has a understanding of cannabis, no more than wine, no more than beer. This is one thing I say, the difference to the cannabis industry in Oregon to the beer industry in Oregon is those guys are putting way more time into the craft and less time into the ego. You know how many times I actually get up on Instagram and try to find some beer production company who's buying Gucci and fucking, you know what I mean? So they're putting into the craft. They're putting into what they're creating and trying to get it isolated before they even push the product. And I don't see the same thing going on in the cannabis industry, which for sure makes people not trust the seed industry. And until people get back to a very, I'm doing this for the craft, the money thing is going to make this that the money wins. The money will win because the money can buy up and sort through all the myth and the hoopla that Adam Dunn will try to sort through with other breeders on his show, that this guy will try to sort through with his buddies. And, everybody who was jumping on the cookie train is so jumping off it right now that they're even posting something about Burner that he did in one of his cookie videos, and it's showing that they knew so much about the cookie strain and the Durban, and it just makes them look like assholes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at one
Well,
point, but at one point, when everyone was jumping on the brand, they were like, "These guys, man, they know their shit, man. I want to buy into this brand." And in 5 years, people are going to be selling their cookie hoodies at Goodwill because the brand ain't going to mean nothing.
okay, so we have a question from one of our IT guys, Smiley, and then I'll add to it. His question is, how is the percentage of mother and father determined per plant or batch? And then I'll add to that by saying, um, do more traits from the male get passed on to the female offspring? Or because that's one thing that I've read is that picking your male is important because
Well, I,
whatever
I think guys who
offspring
are
you get,
focusing more on their males than their females are definitely in the right direction. Uh, there's a guy right now called that I'm really into his profile, AK Brains, and he is so much more on focusing on his male plants and actually getting THC profiles at like 9%, 12%, and and 12, 12% on a male plant is already going to probably give you a high terpene profile just because of that cannabinoid concentration. The terpene profile is so specific because he's really uh, inbred these lines that have connections. So he did a it was a Northern Lights back cross to a hash plant, back cross to what was it? Another Pacific Northwest plant, a Black Domina, and they were all from Cincy Seed Bank. Back in the day, and that's when like Cincy Seed Bank's fucking Black Domina was insane. They're so he crossed them all together. He got really high profiles, probably pretty uh, stabilized terpene profiles, and his different variation plants on that Durban poison, on that Black Domina Northern Lights hash plant, everything that he breeds it into, he's able to know that plant so well. He can know the specifics to his females, exactly what it's adding to. And that's why TGA was so cool to breed with their genetics, because they had this cut of the Space Queen forever they were calling the Dude. And everything the Dude touched would give in some type of sweetness that Romulan, Cindy combination, the Space Queen, linalool, adding to the citrus strains, create the jelly beans, stuff like that, and not even having to stabilize them. Because of this male plant gives off this expression, exactly what the female plants do. You can really understand your phenols now. Going so
okay,
orange, citral means female. Going so
okay,
much more
so
linalool sweet means male.
we're
And now you know what you should breed into it.
no doubt we're gonna open it up to callers. If anybody who's listening right now wants to call in and ask any questions of Elephant Smiley, our number is 1-833-777-3227. That's 1-833-777 dabs. So we got another
Yeah,
guy on the call waiting in line, Smiley. So we want to ask you one more question before we
word.
go. If anybody calls in, and then we want you to plug your social media. But you kind of touched on it a little bit. But if you can give us a 4 or 5 minute spiel on what your opinion is of Phylos Bioscience being a cannabis breeder in Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, basically just on Instagram the last week, Phylos was called out by pretty much every respectable seed breeder that I know of, who had even sent stuff into him from One Eye, from the dog walker. And, the one thing I noticed was no matter anyone bringing up Jeremy Plum's name, Jeremy jumped up on there and started to defend everything he could to his connection to that, to say what their intentions were all good, all positive. Everything was to learn and to put back out on the platform. But the only thing is that to be part of the platform, you have to send something in. So in a way, you almost have to give in to the BS to even see what's on data.
But
And
you
if
have
you
to
have
pay for
something,
it too.
if
You have to
AJ
pay
really
for
sent
it
in the
too.
sour diesel, he knows he has a sour diesel. What I don't like about Mr. Holmes doing is he can now know he's got the sour diesel. Everybody who sends him in a close back cross to the sour diesel that has any of the terpene profiles that any of the assholes who send it in don't know what they have, he can now tell any big company, these are all the strains you should go after that are similar to this very popular strain. And he can do that from the cookie strains to whatever becomes a brand trend strain. And Monsanto, RJ Reynolds, that's exactly how they're going to come at it, because they're not going to come at this Amsterdam heady craft cannabis boutique angle. No, they're going to come at this as cannabis cup, Instagram, Walmart, Costco for idiots. This is like fuck little boutique cannabis spots. You are creating a petri dish of information for guys who want to create a megaplex of cannabis options like Harborside, so that no one else can play ball because they got everything. And I remember when we first started out at Cannabis, there was 5 different little tables. Everyone had to rent out a table. And I remember there was one group of guys, I'm not going to say who they are because they're friends, but there were one group of guys that no matter everybody bringing really good boutique stuff, and I was bringing Primo stuff, and no one knew who Primo was. But these guys would bring at least 100 different strains to where they're really making it hard for anyone else to show their product because they got such a large arsenal. They're really blowing the consumer's mind, and the consumer don't know much. So what the consumer is going to always go for is either if they're rich, they're going to go for exclusivity, and if they're broke, they're going to go for $30 ounces. And the way I see it, guys like Mr. Holmes at Phylos, they're making it really easy for Monsanto to allow the harbor sides to create that type of menu that's like your Marlboro Green 100s, your sour diesel dragon blend, and that's just gonna make everything as bland as every industry already is in America, from music to art. And if you look at every industry right now that's kind of in the entertainment, from music to art to cannabis, they're so intercross related that if you even look at products coming out, Ron English's little grin connected to the cannabis, uh, it's just branding. Burner, what he's doing even with Wiz Khalifa, rap music, everyone's coming out with their own strains now. Eventually this thing isn't about the experience with the plant and what it can do and anything ever being medicinal. And people are so gone in the CBD thing. You would think Rick Simpson was like, damn, didn't I not make this easy for him? But people are
Yeah.
so caught on the brand, because in America, you go to a coffee shop, you could understand it's a good coffee shop, but you see Starbucks, and Starbucks brand means you got money to buy artisanal coffee. You go to Whole Foods rather than go to a co-op, you come out with that Whole Foods logo, and it still means I'm part of a sect of society that can afford this artisanal good. You come out of a pharma, as opposed to coming out of some spot on 72nd and Herald, they might have better product and better prices at this spot over here, but it's not as much of an exclusive brand.
Word. Okay, so my
And
last
you know,
question before you.
you work for a couple of those racks that we know are different in creating that exclusive brand.
Yeah, man, hell yeah, dude, for real. It's all about that. What do you have? My last question before you plug your social media is what you have coming out in the future. Do you have any new seeds that you're gonna have at any seed banks online or anything like that you want to plug in?
Yeah, I mean, we're really trying to get into a few seed banks by the end of this year, but what we're really going on right now is locking down sour strains, uh, really making them so the profile is consistent on different uh, variations in sour strains. We're working with a couple cookie strains, but mostly the most important thing we're working on, people like Tangy, we're working on these citrus strains right now that are basically different versions of the citral, from lemon to orange to, grapefruit. So from the Blue City Diesel all the way to, tangy citral strains that we're working on to really have this line of cannabis terpenes that it doesn't even really smell like cannabis anymore. It's going on terpene profiles that really augment the high. And the THC is kind of like the boat, but the terpenes are the oars, and they're really what's steering your fade, reminding you of
That
some
is a
lemon you
good
smelled back when you were a
analogy,
kid at a
bro.
fair, you know?
That's a good analogy, dude. Like, serious.
Everyone
The
has a different
cannabis, the
experience
cannabis
with
is the
their
boat.
visceral aesthetic
The
experience in
terpenes
life.
are the
Everyone's going to have
oar.
a different experience to taste, smell, touch. Their whole visceral experience with cannabis is going to be different, and you got to understand that. And another thing we're really trying to lock down, everyone's trying to make diamonds, but we've really been trying to make live sugar wax. Lock down that what we're doing when we create our terpene strains is like people are making live resin right now. What we're doing is we're making live sugar wax. We process it and we allow the terpenes to cure in the sugar wax. So what you're getting is something that eventually can have a cure date on it. You're getting oil that's been cured for 3 months. You know how the terpene profile has been escalated. And it's not just a product that we made it last week and it kind of reminds you of OG this.
Dope. Hell yeah. So can you plug all your social media before we go, Smiley? We got our guy Noah Bentley waiting on the call here to come on next. Can you plug your is it
Yeah,
just IG or
I
you
checked
also
out
have
his site
Twitter?
too. I like what he's doing, definitely. Yeah, Terpenology 420 on Instagram. Follow Terpenology on Facebook as well. Of course, I got Elephant Smiley 420, Elephant Smiley on drugs. On Instagram, also pumping the music and the art apparel stuff coming out with the cannabis lines too. So you can
Nice.
check out all that stuff at Terpenology 420. It is definitely one that can link you into most of the other sites on Instagram.
Okay. Well, Smiley, we really appreciate you coming on the show, dude. You got a lot of knowledge and I'm going to stay at you. Hopefully we can have you on again sometime in the future. Um Dude, like it's really been an honor. I appreciate you taking the time, man, and hipping
Yeah, I
everybody
mean,
to.
me and Shiva Vicious has been working on this thing for a while, and I mean, I'm glad that you got to meet us, and we got to connect. And I mean, you really got to get some packets of this Ewok back cross with the humble pie. I mean, the
I'm
Ewok is
about
like
that
the
life,
Albert Walker to the
bro.
next.
I'm about that
It is
life,
so
man.
funky. It is so funky, bro. You would just fucking love it.
Okay, dude. So as soon as we get all the audio and everything uploaded, dude, I'll text